creativity of the human mind is unquestionable. From the unfathomable ancient wonders of the world to the present generation of tech and AI, it is quite impressive. But then again, you begin to draw the line when you see throughout history the sadistic and torturous length humans can go to instill punishment on the one who goes against them. Stoning, hanging, and burning quivers when faced with these twisted punishing methods empires, military and people display to break minds, destroy bodies, and infuse fear in the minds of people. This will definitely stop you from sleeping. Do not try this at home. Number 9. Brazen Bull. The Sicilian tyrant Phalaris was running out of ideas on how he could stamp his authority and terrorize anyone who would dare question his rule until he met with Perillos of Athens. Perillos was one of the best brass craftsmen in the 6th century BC, and he invented one of the most creatively devilish inventions of his time. It was a replica of a bull made of bronze that had a door into the inside of the bull. This door served as the entrance where, by the order of Phalaris, anyone who offended him was carried inside the bronze bull statue. Then, under the bull, the torture began. A huge pile of fire would be started. This would begin making the metal red hot, and the victim would begin crying and burning slowly from the hotness of the metal. Gradually, the victim's flesh develops severe burns with every contact with the red, hot bronze, until the victim cannot hold it any longer and dies of the heat, burns, and low ventilation. Number 8. Iron Maiden. The most universally accepted means of inflicting severe punishment and tortuous death during the Middle Age down to the late 18th century across Europe was the Iron Maiden. This method of punishment was employed by authorities to either punish the accused or force a confession. This, in turn, stroked fear in the hearts of the remaining offenders and the people. The Iron Maiden is like a towering tomb, richly decorated with spikes on the inside. The offender is placed upright inside the structure, with little to no space for any form of movement. As the Maiden's door is closed, the spikes begin their work. The spikes are made in such a way to escape vital organs, so they only pierce the flesh. This is followed by severe pain and loud cries as a result of puncture wounds. There is no room for movement inside the Iron Maiden, and the prolonged anguish continues until the victim dies. But before we get started, hit the subscribe button to stay updated. Number 7. Rat torture. This is one of the most graphic and disturbing kinds of torture, where you begin to ask yourself, what kind of heart thought about this? Was it just being creative, or just pure evil? As also replicated in Fast and Furious and in the Game of Thrones series, the victim of this torture is tied to a table, and then hungry or diseased rats placed in a bucket are introduced to either the victim's bare chest or stomach. Then the bucket is heated, and survival instinct kicks in. The innocent rats, with fear and hunger looking for a means of escape, scratch and chew their way through the flesh of the now miserable person. All the while, the person goes through deep psychological damage. From the fear of what the rat could do, followed by the pain of being eaten alive, to the sense of helplessness when you know the inevitable is near, the psychological torture is heart-shattering. Rat torture was used during the Middle Ages as a way of torture and execution. Those who were also tortured with it never remained the same, both bodily and psychologically. Number 6. The Spanish donkey. You could say this punishment doesn't result in death, yes, but it takes away the dignity and prestige of a person for life and inflicts pain never felt before on the most sensitive part of humans, all done as a public spectacle to keep people in control. Done in several European countries between the 16th and 17th centuries, the Spanish donkey, also known as wooden horse or donkey perch, was a thin, sharp, triangular saddle made of wood. Then the victim is placed on the wooden donkey and made to balance both legs on each side, followed by being shackled on the arms and legs and, most likely, fastened with weights. The pressure of the weight and the sharpness of the wood cause severe pain and injuries to the genital and rectal regions of the individual. Although the Spanish donkey is portrayed in artworks, the ugly scene it brings to mind isn't something to be wished upon anyone. Number 5. Drawing and quartering. This is one of the most disturbing punishments you can possibly witness. Now you begin to question the purity and wickedness of the ancient world, while not just beheading the perpetrator. Oh no! That won't be enough to teach others a lesson, so let me do the most. This started in England in the 13th century. The accused's first dying encounter with a horse is when they are tied to the horse and dragged to the gallows, where they could either be beheaded, hanged, or disemboweled. After that, the lifeless body of the condemned is tied to not one but 4 horses. The legs and the arms are tied to each horse so the body can be quartered. Then the horses are made to run in different directions at high speed, leading to each limb separating from the body. This kind of terrible punishment was only reserved for those who were guilty of treason, and it went on for more than 400 years until it was stopped in 1867. Number 4, the rack. One of the simplest yet excruciating pain giver is the rack. Its oldest record of being used was in the late 15th century, down to the 18th century. It was very useful in both sniffing out the truth via torture and inflicting punishment on those on the wrong side of the law. The rack was made up of a rectangular frame attached to the edges, ropes or chains, and a troller. To get started, the culprit's ankles and wrists are fastened to the roller and secured to the frame. Then the torturer uses the rollers to begin stretching the limbs in opposite directions. With it, the pain becomes severe, and the agony of the culprit increases, to the extent that most times it leads to muscle damage, dislocated joints, and fractured bones. The torturer plays with the mind of the culprit to confess unless more physical pain is done to them. Over and over, this is done until it becomes unbearable for the culprit, who admits their guilt or confesses to the crime accused. This was used during the reign of Queen Elizabeth Remse and for religious transgressors during the Spanish Inquisition. Number 3, Scaphism. One of the worst skin-crawling methods of torture was Scaphism, which originated in Persia and was first documented in the 1st century AD by the Greek historian Plutarch. This was the capital punishment for serious crimes in that area. The victims found guilty were placed between hollowed-out tree trunks or trapped between 2 small boats with their limbs exposed. Then they are forcefully fed milk and honey. Not because the torturers are nice, hell no. This was to make the victim have extreme diarrhea, attracting insects, dirt, and infection. The sweet mixture is given to the victim over and over till their flesh is eaten away, exposed to diseases, and gradually results in the death of the victim. Number 2, White Room torture. Not as physically disturbing as the rest of the list. This is more psychological, and the effect is eternal. This is one of the torture methods used in the modern world. Some nations like Iran, Venezuela, and the United States are being accused of using it. The goal is to completely isolate the victim and deprive them of their senses. In terms of the eyes, the prisoner is made to see only white. The walls, ceiling, floors, and even the food given to them are all white. Also, a neon tube is placed in the prison, so no shadow is shown. The prison is soundproof. The guards wear padded shoes, and the sound is the one made by them. This could go on for months until the captor is satisfied. A well-documented White Room torture case occurred in 2004 when Amir Fakhravar was arrested in Iran and subjected to torture for 8 months. After the ordeal, Amir was no longer himself. He couldn't remember anyone, not even his parents, and found it hard to sleep. Number 1, Blood Eagle. The Vikings, known for their wild raids, killing, and nomadic life in the late 8th and early 11th centuries, had a way of dishing out vengeance on their worst enemies when captured. This ritualistic punishment is one of the most degrading and horrific punishments that can be done to anybody, and most times, before it is done, the victim is already dead. First, both hands of the victim are tied individually to a pole. Then the back of the condemned is sliced open. Each side of the back's flesh is also tied to the pole, revealing the ribs and internal organs of the victim. By this time, the victim is already groaning in pain. But it is not over. The executioner will gradually break each rib and twist them upward to look like an eagle spreading its wings. This is where the name comes from. Blood Eagle. After that, salt is added to injury, literally. Then the final blow done is that the lungs will be pulled out and wrapped around the eagle's winged ribs. The Blood Eagle is still debated. Is it only stuff of legend, or was it real? Conclusion. During the evolution of civilization, torture has always been an accepted way for confession, punishment, and control. But now, human rights law has prohibited such treatment. The 1948 United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights has made it so. Although psychological while torture and underground torture do still happen, there is no public spectacle for such savagery again. Which of these punishments sent chills down your spine?